Time for our weekly segment in partnership with the Daily Poster, highlighting their original journalism. Joining us now, we have the founder of Daily Poster, David Sirota. Great to see you, David.
Good to see you, David.
Good morning.
So you have an interesting piece out right now with regards to the reconciliation bill and where we're at. I personally think the Biden proposal is total trash. You are calling on the administration to call the bluff of Manchin, Sinema, and all of the other people who are more quietly dragging their heels. Let's throw this tear sheet up on the screen. You say, call their bluff right now. It's time for Democratic leaders to make Manchin, Sinema, and every other senator vote, and not on some gutted half measure, but on a real $3.5 trillion bill. Explain your thinking there.
Well, look, we've seen the negotiations whittle down this bill to, it looks like it's going to almost nothing. I mean, it started out, Bernie Sanders said it should have been 10 trillion, so he started out at 6 trillion. Joe Manchin said he could accept $4 trillion of spending. Then it went to 3.5 trillion. Then it went to 1.9 trillion. Then Manchin said it's 1.5 trillion. Point being that the delays continue to result in exactly what Manchin and Sinema and other conservative Democrats, what their donors want, which is basically a bill that is gutted or killed. We wrote about this back in August, which is what we said was that what was probably going to happen is that the House progressives who are saying that they're going to hold out, if they don't make their demands explicitly clear what exactly they want in a reconciliation bill, then likely you will see a process where the Democratic leadership guts that bill, just keeps hollowing it out. And you've seen Manchin and Sinema make periodic statements through the press. Oh, we don't like the tax provisions. Oh, we don't like the pharmaceutical provisions. Oh, we don't like the climate provisions. And every time they make a declaration like that, the White House and Congress go to work on hacking apart the bill. So the point is, instead of engaging in that process, instead of engaging in what is obviously a deliberate game, a game that Manchin and Sinema and their donors want to play, stop playing that game and put a real bill on the floor and simply have a vote. Now, that doesn't guarantee that Manchin and Sinema will vote for a good bill, but it basically puts them on the spot in a way that they're not on the spot right now. They have the best of both worlds right now. They get to make these declarations through the press, have the bill get watered down, have Democrats essentially negotiate against themselves, and never have to actually face an up or down vote. You know, there's one idea there to have an up or down vote, put a bunch of stuff in there for Arizona and West Virginia, and try to dare them to explicitly vote against, major investments in their own state. And the fact that the Democratic leadership hasn't done this is really a signal that it's not necessarily all that serious about actually passing a real bill. This is something that the Democratic leadership could do right now. And it's been going on for weeks and weeks, if not months. And they have refused to do this.
Yeah, that was my next question, is why don't they just try something like this? I mean, we've seen threats from Nancy Pelosi about, fine, I'll just put stuff on the floor. If you really are going to do it, then go ahead. And, usually it does seem to work out. Why are the White House and the Democratic leadership in the Senate, I mean, do they just really believe that they won't vote for it? Or are they just not having the political coverage from Biden to say that this is a tactic they're willing to pursue?
My guess is that they're afraid that Sinema and Manchin and a couple others will vote the bill down. Now, we're led to believe that would be the worst tragedy in the world. But of course, we've seen time and time again, bills get voted down, they get brought back up. That's not really a big deal. And that's not really an excuse. It doesn't hold water. You can keep bringing up a bill to have a vote. Democrats control the schedule. They control the Congress. So to me, my guess is they're somewhat afraid of the political fallout from that. I also think, though, that the Democratic Party has a culture of conflict aversion inside of its party, that it doesn't like to put pressure on members of its own party, which is very different, by the way, from the Republican Party. You've seen Donald Trump, pressing members of his party when he was president to actually pass things. But I also think there's potentially something even more nefarious going on, which ultimately it does raise the question. If you're not willing to actually play hardball for an agenda that the president, says that he is for, if you're not willing to actually force some votes, for instance, or really go campaign in these states for your bill, it kind of suggests that you're not really willing to fight for your bill, that perhaps you don't mind the bill being watered down. I mean, let's be clear. What you have going on here is Manchin and Sinema and Bob Menendez on the pharmaceutical stuff, and probably a bunch of others on various things. They are essentially helping the Democratic Party's donors. They're big corporate donors. Get rid of what those corporate donors don't want. And so there's a rotating villain kind of phenomenon here where, yes, it's Manchin and Sinema and Menendez, but the point is that they're kind of all colluding to allow this bill to get cut and withered away. And it raises the question, is that actually what Democratic Party leaders really want? Because if they didn't really want that, they have tools at their disposal, like, for instance, forcing a vote, to actually try to up the ante and get this bill passed.
I mean, I think a data point that would argue for that view of the world is that I was asking Jeff Stein a couple weeks ago, of course, Washington Post economics reporter we have on all the time, what are Biden's actual priorities in this bill? Because I could tell you, I could tell you what Bernie really cares about. I could tell you what any number of members of Congress really care about within this bill. And I really couldn't tell you what the president of the United States prioritizes in this bill. His response to me was that it seemed like the community college piece was actually really important to him, and he brought it up a bunch of times, et cetera. And then we get this proposal, and the community college piece is totally gone. So that would argue that even the part that he was like the most enthusiastic about, he just casually dispenses with, that perhaps the only thing they truly care about in any of this is getting a quote unquote win, regardless if that win is, $25 and a new college scholarship or whatever it is, just so that they can say, look, we passed something and we got some bipartisan support on our infrastructure deal.
You're absolutely right. I mean, this is very, very ancient Washington thinking. As long as we get something called a deal, a piece of paper that we can wave around and say, hey, we got a deal, that's the only thing in their mind that seems to matter. But what I would argue is that what really matters is, are you materially improving people's lives as quickly as possible? That is the thing that gives you the best chance to actually, for instance, win the midterm elections. That running around saying, look at this great deal that we got, and having that deal not actually deliver real material gains for people that they can feel, tangible gains that voters can feel, actually makes your political problem even worse. Because then you're running around saying, look at this huge victory we got, and people are saying, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't feel it. You're basically not telling me the truth. And so I think what's gone on is that the Biden administration seems not really to appreciate that, not really focused on that, doesn't really value that. And it's really, again, it goes back to a Washington way of thinking where a deal, no matter what's in it, seems to matter the most. But I would also add one other thing. It also speaks to the Democratic Party's, the fundamental contradiction in the Democratic Party, which creates so many problems for the party, which is trying to appease big corporate donors and trying to deliver real material gains to regular people. Those two things are often directly in conflict. And if you try to not pick a side, you're effectively going to pick a side. And you're going to pick a side of standing with your corporate donors, which is going to piss a lot of people off.
Yeah, because the status quo was good for them. They benefit from the status quo. So if nothing happens, great for them. David, lastly, what would you advise progressives who, to their credit, won an early sort of minor victory in this game of chicken and forced people back to the negotiating table, et cetera, et cetera. They've long said no climate, no deal. How would you advise them to play their cards at this point?
Well, it's what I said back in August, and it remains the case today. Make your demands extremely clear. Whatever those demands are, whatever those lines in the sand are, they should have made those demands, in my view, months ago. That the best negotiating strategy, in my view, is to make your demands transparent and clear early on, and make clear that you are not going to back away from those demands. Those demands being, what programs do you want in this bill? What regulations do you want in this bill? What are the actual numbers here? Don't use vague terms like robust. That's the problem. The progressives have said, we're going to hold out for a robust bill. But that is an undefined term. And when you don't define that term, it allows your opponents to keep whittling away and say, hey, listen, you haven't made exactly clear what you really want. So they need to make clear exactly what they want.
That's a really good point.
Yep. Great to have you, David. Tell people where they can go and subscribe and support the work that you're doing, most importantly.
You can find our work at dailyposter.com. And we would love to have everybody come check out our work and be a subscriber.
Yeah, I think you should. We rely on you guys all the time. That's why we're in partnership with you. Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
Great to see you, David.
Great to see you. Thanks to both of you.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.